Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sami Haj Assad, and with me, as always, is my friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
I like how I'm no longer your good friend. I'm just your friend. There was a little pause there. I heard it.
Sorry, I panicked. I forgot what I was supposed to say.
Yeah, friendship is a confusing thing.
It is. How you doing, man?
Pass on that question.
Okay. That's the voice and opinion of my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Ben. You can find his work all over the internet. Ben, give them a taste. Just give them a little taste of where they can find your stuff.
Sure, you can read my words at Motor Trend, at Inside Hook, and at Capital One Auto Navigator.
I like that. You can read my words. You can read my words over at autotrader.ca and Capital One's Auto Navigator. And you can watch me in action on the driving.ca YouTube channel. What do you think of that, Ben?
I like the idea of you being in action. It's something I don't often think about.
Do you think of me as just a static automotive journalist just standing there doing stuff?
I'm now imagining a Sami Haj Assad action figure.
What do you think it would have like a button that it would do something? Or we used to have these, like, I think there were Power Rangers where you would squeeze their legs together and they'd do this crazy karate chop.
When I was a kid, I had this He-Man toy. And actually, it was a birthday present. And in fact, two people brought it to my birthday, and I was only allowed to keep one of them, which doesn't seem fair. But it was this.
How many He-Man do you need?
Well, it was a specific He-Man where you would like twist the waist, and it had these caps in the back, like for a cap gun, and it would spin and punch. God. And when it punched, it made like a cap sound because that's how strong it was punching. Yeah, but I think for your action figure...
Caps are terrifying. I don't know why we were allowed to be around caps.
When's the last time you saw a cap?
I swear I've heard them. Or they're gunshots. Oh. They're actual gunshots. I think they're very
I was in
loud.
Montreal on Friday, this past Friday, so about a week ago. And there was someone on the sidewalk with a cap gun shooting someone else with the cap gun. It was like it had the orange tip on it and bang, bang with cap sounds. If you ever needed a display of what white privilege looks like, it's being on a public street with a cap gun shooting someone else and there are no consequences. Like,
I wasn't allowed to have such things.
No, me neither. I wasn't allowed to have war toys when I was a kid. No G.I. Joes. Nothing. I had Transformers. That was as close as it got. And I understand that as someone who appreciates what my parents did for me growing up. Like, I get it. It's not for everyone. And it wasn't something in our household. So I didn't have, I had water pistols and stuff. I never had a super soaker. Those were too extravagant. I don't think we could afford. No, but I mean, they were pretty crazy back when they first came out.
They are wild, yeah.
But I think that your action figure, the accessories, like, it always comes with like a little extra something. I think you would probably have like multiple facial hair accessories that you could pop on and off. It would be like magnetic. And you could have.
Do you really think I changed my facial hair design? I usually keep it the same, but just bigger or shorter.
Well,
I usually just go.
That's what it would be. It would be like more bushy, less bushy, more defined, more wild.
I also find that I cut my hair way less frequently than everyone else I know, and so they either see me with like a fresh cut or like long curly hair.
Yeah. I cut my hair for the first time since the wedding, also on Friday, and my barber Diego was surprised by how much hair there was. Before and after, when he was looking at the floor, he was like, "Wow, it had been, I think, 6 months." So
wow. Yeah. We're here to talk about cars, though, and we haven't done that yet.
Thanks for bearing with us through that introduction.
But we do have some cars to talk about, including one that has really been a focal point of an entire automaker, I think, and that's you with the Chevrolet Blazer, right, Ben?
Yeah, so I tried to drive a Blazer, I want to say in August, and I went to pick it up, and it wouldn't charge, and the transmission didn't work. So,
is there a transmission in Blazers?
I was told that it wouldn't shift. So whether that means there's a transmission or whether that just means the drive control module wouldn't go into drive, that's how it was put to me. In any case,
okay, gotcha.
I couldn't drive it, so I went home with something else. I don't remember. I think it was a Cadillac XT4, which I hadn't driven in a very long time. We talked about it on the show.
Oh, yes.
But
not a one-to-one experience.
No, but the reason I bring this up is because my experience with that is similar to what a lot of people have had to deal with the Blazer, in the sense that it arrived really late. GM had tons of production problems. They had stop sale orders. And then when people did get their cars, they did not work. And there were a variety of problems with them, all of which were frustrating for a company that's trying to, this is their Ultium platform, which we've talked about numerous times. I've driven the Cadillac Lyriq. I've driven the Silverado EV. Both of those vehicles use similar but different versions of the platform, the Lyriq being the most similar, as it's a similarly sized. How many times can I say similar? It's
similar.
It's a same-sized SUV to the Blazer. So the Blazer, out of all those vehicles, was the one that kind of came to market last. And that's weird because GM was really hoping that this was going to be their mass market appeal. Like this is going to be the EV that sells in big numbers for them. I mean, they kind of had that with the Bolt, but we all know what they did with the Bolt. We talked about it last week. R.I.P. Bolt. And I really wanted to drive this thing. My electrician owns one. He is happy with his. He hasn't had any of the crazy problems that he reads about online because he's on the owners' forums and stuff, and he's trying to stay abreast with what's happening. But I didn't know what to expect, Sammy, when I picked it up.
Okay, and
well, I got the Blazer EV.
Can we actually just talk to me really quickly about what you think about the design of this Blazer? Because I think it makes a very visual. It has a very visual impression, especially compared to some of the other Ultium-based crossover vehicles, like the Lyriq and the Acura that you recently drove as well, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not. So I had the RS trim, and that is kind of the fancy Blazer. It has mine had like this crazy paint called like red tint coat on it. It looks pretty fancy. I've said fancy again. What's going on with me tonight? It's not super dissimilar from the normal Blazer, right?
Okay.
Like they're similar in body shape. They're about the same size, I guess. They are aimed at the same customer. The biggest differences, though, is as with all SUVs that are electric, Chevrolet has done its best to go full ham on the lighting. So at the front of the vehicle, you have this like light bar that goes across the whole front, the light up logo. And at the back, it has taillights that do like a light dance whenever you approach the vehicle with your keys. So when you see this out on the road, you know that it's the electric Blazer. Like you're not going to make the mistake and think that it's not. I think that there's also like compared to the gas powered Blazer, there's a cutout behind the wheel in the front. It's almost like a scallop, a small scallop. I think that that's because they needed a place to put the charge port, and these Ultium vehicles have a comically large charging port. It's this like big pancake thing that comes down out of the side of the fender, and it's literally 2 to 3 times larger than the port itself. I don't understand why it has to be so big. It's almost like they couldn't find a way to cut into the fender and make it look good if it was smaller.
Okay.
It's motorized, which means you can't just pop it open. You have to push a button and then it shakily extends itself. And this is the same on the Lyriq. It's just how they've decided to do it. I would wonder how well it's going to hold up to snow and ice, because like when you have it open and the car is plugged in, snow builds up in the charge port. This is just something that happens on every vehicle. But since the Blazers is so big, if there's snow and ice behind it, I don't know how the motor's going to handle it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I think we've talked about this in the past. I think the Porsche Taycan also has this kind of charge port, and they say that they do some sort of like vibrating trick to that doesn't sound right, to shake it free of some ice or snow or whatever might get on it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I guess.
Yeah.
The simpler thing would be just make it smaller and not motorized. It's a gas cap. How many cars have motorized gas caps?
But I don't think we use the gas cap every day in our experience, right?
For sure. But you're saying that extra burden requires motorization? Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, maybe I would grow so weary that I would not be willing to open or close it by myself. Maybe that's a possibility.
Maybe. It's tough. I mean, I don't know what the like, how do you say this? I don't know what the like goal of the motorization is. It must have a feature,
I guess. That's the only thing I can think of.
Excuse me. But why that instead of anything else, right? Like you said, why that in particular?
Well, maybe because the panel is so large that they're worried if they put a hinge on it, it would be like a fulcrum. and there'd be more chance for damage because typically gas caps are pretty small, and this one it's enormous. But we're really dwelling on this. It's the only aspect of the Blazer's design that I find questionable. Okay. I think everything else about it looks good. It's attractive. It's decently sized. It doesn't feel huge. The interior is a little plain. Like, you get inside. In Canada, this is priced at $67,000. In the US, the Blazer, there's 2 trims that are available right now, the LT and the RS, and the price range is like low 50,000s to the mid 50,000s. So that's not a ton of money, but it's not nothing. Next year, there's going to be the SS trim that's coming as well, and I think they're going to broaden the LT to, like, you know how GM likes to do their 1 LT, 2 LT kind of thing. There's an asterisk that really needs to be talked about with the 2024 model, though, and that's that for the next model year, 2025, there are meaningful power updates to every single trim level, I believe, except the base, the ultra base one. Okay. And Super Cruise becomes available as an option. There's another thing that's changing, at least in the US.
Hold on. It didn't have the option for Super Cruise?
No, not in 2024.
What is happening? Why are they keeping this out of everyone's hands?
The other thing that's a little bit weird about the 2024 model is it comes standard in the US and Canada with something called the RS Convenience and Driver Confidence Package. So in Canada, it's not called that for the RS. It's just equipment that's included. But in the US, it's actually called that, and it's a package you can't get rid of. But the weird thing is, it's like $2,600. They give you a credit for it when you buy it. And I think the LT trim comes with 2 packages that are included that you can't get rid of with a credit as well. For 2025, they're going to break those packages apart and make some of those things add-on options, some of them package options, but they're no longer going to be giving it to you for free. So you're getting more power and stuff. Pricing will be roughly the same, but you'll probably be paying more for certain features like head-up display, heated seats in the back, and adaptive cruise, that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
So it's a little bit... What I'm saying is, don't buy the 2024 if you want to get the best value. And this is something we ran into with the Supra, where when the Supra came out, the first model year had X amount of horsepower, and then the second model year had like way more. And anyone who was an early adopter got burned by that. There's no word from Chevrolet whether there's an over-the-air update that will change the range and horsepower of the Blazer. Maybe they'll do it that way. But I think you're probably, I mean, we're November now, right? Why not just wait for 2025?
Exactly. I think that's fair, especially if there are upgrades coming and that they'll have more features to offer. But it might get more expensive in the process.
Yeah, somewhat. I don't think a lot, but somewhat.
That's my biggest concern. That's all.
So power-wise, there's something else that I like about this Blazer, and that's that it doesn't try to be a performance vehicle. I mean, they have the SS coming. That is going to be the high-performance model. And unlike, say, Hyundai with the Ioniqs or Mustang with the Mach-E, I mean, I guess there's the GT that's the performance one, really. But the horsepower for this, I had an all-wheel drive version, so it's 2 motors, 288 horsepower and 333 pound-feet of torque. That's pretty basic. It's not bad. It's not great. It's fine. I never thought I didn't need more power. It's heavy. I mean, this is like 5,500, 5,700 pounds, something like that. But it still had enough power to get out of its own way. I never had trouble passing. I only really noticed the weight in corners. Like, it really does feel heavy when you try to turn too quickly. But that's, I think, a feature of almost all the Ultiums I've driven. But I like that. I like that you don't have to buy some kind of land missile just because it's electric. You can get a reasonably powered electric SUV, and that's not easy to find in an all-wheel drive model. Most of the time, they're like 400 horsepower, 500 horsepower. It's not necessary.
I think some of the other vehicles have like 300-ish or 320 or something like that when you're talking about like the more regular sort of versions of the Mustang Mach-E or the Ioniq. But yeah, 400.
Is the dual motor Ioniq 320? I thought it was more than that.
I'm going to double check for you just so that I don't sound crazy.
The torque is really high though, right?
Yeah, of course. All of them have.
Well, no. So torque. This one's only 333 pound-feet.
That sounds reserved, right?
Yeah. And I like that. I think that's fine.
Powertrain handling on these Ioniqs is 186, 225 for the SE, SEL, Unlimited. 225. And then 320 for these all-wheel drive models. 320 is the all-wheel drive model, 225 for the rear-wheel drive version.
And what about torque?
Torque 256 for the rear-wheel drive and 446 for the.
So that's 100 pound-feet more.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a huge difference, and I didn't miss it. The range.
Okay, great.
Range is 279.
I mean, 100 on paper seems like a huge difference, but if you don't miss it, I think that's pretty impressive.
There's a clear difference in acceleration. I think it's like something like just over 6 seconds to 60. But I don't need my daily driver to be fast like that. Like, that's what I mean by not missing it. You know, like, I do notice the difference driving one versus an Ioniq with all-wheel drive. But like, last year I drove the base rear-wheel drive long-range Ioniq 5. And this feels very similar to that in terms of performance, maybe a little bit quicker. And that's perfectly acceptable. I think we've become addicted to the idea that electric vehicles have to be high-performance vehicles.
That's fair, yeah.
Range for the Blazer EV in all-wheel drive form, 279 miles. You can get about 50 miles more if you go rear-wheel drive only. I think 279 is fine. It was very usable. I went to Montreal and back, and it took me about 60% of the battery. And that's a trip of 200, including the driving I did while I was there, probably just under 300 kilometers. So I think that's pretty good. I mean, 300 kilometers.
There and back. You didn't have to charge.
I didn't have to charge. I had 40% left. It was showing me something like 488 kilometers, typically on the range display. 430 to 480, I think, was depending on the temperature.
On 100%?
Yeah.
I keep seeing that, and I keep wondering what. I see a lot of vehicles pushing like over 400 or just under 500, and I keep wondering if that'll change based on driving habits, temperature, and
I can tell you that
conditions, right?
It did drop the temperature. So this vehicle's rated at 33 kilowatt hours per 100 miles from the EPA. Mm-hmm. And I was driving at temperatures just above freezing for most of the time I had it, and that dropped it to about 38 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. So that's a definite difference. It's not a huge difference, but 5 kilowatt hours, that's like 18%, I guess. And I'm still not below freezing. So once you drop even further, you're going to notice more efficiency problems.
So I'm always caught off guard by like the estimation. I think there's some vehicles that really can tell you a really like accurate reading. And then there's some that are really conservative and give you a really low number that doesn't seem to move as you start driving, which I can't remember which car was like that. But it seemed like no matter how much I drove it, it was like it would drop 1%. I mean, 1 mile for really every 2 that I drove. And I was always like, is this right?
I believe that the vehicle that I have, this is weird. I'm seeing multiple battery sizes. I can't remember exactly. I think it's 102 kilowatt hours.
Yeah, huge.
There's an 85 kilowatt hour version as well for the front wheel drive version that hasn't arrived yet. Like, that's coming next year. And I think that's also going to be available on the rear wheel drive models or some other versions of the vehicle next year. It's not clear. One of the things I noticed when I was trying to research this vehicle is that there were a lot of predictions made, or not predictions, but statements made from GM about the versions you'd be able to buy, and a lot of those didn't make it to market, including Super Cruise. I think Super Cruise was announced for 2024 and they didn't build any with it. So the trim levels, the features were really chopped. I think they were just happy to get them out the door. 2025 should be a cleaner model year in terms of predicting what features you can actually buy.
Right. Okay. So what overall the experience in the car, like positive, negative, or what? I mean, the major thing I think that we forget to talk about with the Blazer is the user experience, right? Because the Blazer and Chevrolet's electric vehicle process is to somehow make this cohesive user interface that is lacking Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So I like everything about this vehicle for the most part. It's a little expensive. I'm going to be honest. $50,000 US and $67 here for the version that I had in Canada. That's a lot of money.
We talk about pricing every episode. We always say cars are too expensive.
Yeah, this car is
People are tuning us out now.
This car is definitely too expensive, but it is in line with other vehicles in its class, so I can't really complain about it that way.
Okay.
And I thought it was useful. I carried a set of 4-winter tires into Montreal on steel rims with the seats folded forward. I had plenty of room. I could have even carried...
You're just giving your tires a cruise into the town?
Yeah, I take them there. I'm like, this is where you used to live. You don't live here anymore. And then I take them back.
And they like that. They like being told what's up.
Who couldn't really tell what a tire likes? I don't make any claims as to knowing either way. But in any case, it was useful. It was comfortable. The power was good. The charging speed's 190 kilowatts. I mean, I didn't need that. I didn't do any fast charging. I was just charging at home. But that's pretty quick. And everything was good except for, drum roll, that infotainment system you mentioned. Mm-hmm. I do not like the Google system. I do not like that I have to log on. I do not like that I have to log into every individual app that's there, download apps. All of that stuff is already on my phone. I should be able to just use it on my phone. If someone in my household is borrowing my car, or if we're a one-car household, I know that we will never be a one-car household because I have a sickness. But if we were, and I have friends and acquaintances who've complained about this with the Blazer EV specifically, they don't like that their spouse has to log out, log in, and then they have to log out, log in. It's just a hassle when you already have all that on your phone with you. The other thing is it does weird things. Like, I was unable to get voice commands to work with the system. When I hit the voice control button, I wasn't logged into the Google infotainment, but what it did do was pop up the Google Assistant on my phone, the setup screen. I don't have it set up there. And it was like prompting me to do that. Which is an odd thing to do, right? If I went to the screen, the infotainment screen, and tapped Google Assistant on the screen, I could use voice commands there. So voice commands were available, just not using the button on the steering wheel. It's weird things like that where, like, I shouldn't have to know what I'm logged into, what I'm not, as to whether a feature is going to work. It's confusing. The system was locking me into Google Maps. The Waze was installed as an app, but I had to log into Waze specifically. And in my experience, and this is something that happened with Google Maps, you can't delete destinations easily or at all in these features. So I bring this up because I'm sharing this vehicle with other journalists. They now have my home address and they have a list of places that I went during the week. And that's not cool. You know, if they have that and I can't delete it from my own car, imagine what Google has about you. You know, if it's on your phone and you choose not to use your phone, that's fine. But if it's in your car and you can't turn it off because it's always there, that's another thing.
I had an automotive journalist point this out to me in a really unsavory way. They had hooked up a press vehicle to an app, one of those remote control apps, in terms of telling you where the vehicle is, how to lock or unlock the car, or start or stop charging.
You mean like an app you download from the automaker?
Yeah. And they had hooked this up to their car, hooked their press car up to this app that they had. The automaker gave credentials or something along the lines of that. And then they could see where the car was all the time. And no matter how they tried to factory reset the vehicle, and the app, it would still give him notifications when charging would start or stop, even though he was no longer driving this vehicle. And it was really sketchy, and I didn't like that very much.
There are a ton of privacy concerns. Some of them are built into the systems, and some of them are bugs and side effects. You know?
Yeah, he seemed to suggest that this was more of a bug than anything else. Like, they couldn't figure, the automaker themselves. He told the automaker themselves couldn't figure it out. And that was that, which is not great.
No, not great at all.
Okay, but back to your experience with this Blazer.
I mean, I don't have much more to say about it. It was overall a good experience. I think that if you're looking for an all-wheel drive electric vehicle in an SUV form factor, this is actually, I had someone comment that it looked more like a wagon than an SUV because it does have a squat appearance. This is something you should drive. You should check it out. I am going to balance that out by saying there have been many quality problems with Ultium. So you should be prepared for things to get weird potentially.
So far though, these problems have been relegated to the Chevrolet and GMC vehicles, right? Or the GM vehicles. I'm only saying that because the Acura and the Honda seem to not be as affected.
Yeah, but I'm not considering them in this conversation, and I already wouldn't recommend the ZDX for all the reasons we talked about.
Right.
It's a different class of vehicle for starters. But the one last thing I do want to say about it, this is the first Ultium vehicle from GM that I've had that didn't have a rattle or a noise inside of it while I was driving. The Cadillac had a bad rattle in the back and the weird mechanical noise in the front. And the Silverado that was $123,000 had a rattle in the dash that I could not track down. So the Blazer was quiet, which makes it the first well-built Ultium I've driven.
Anything else you want to talk about this? Would you recommend this car compared to the Ioniq 5?
I just did. Yeah, I think you need to drive it. I think it is a good competitor to the Ioniq 5. Legitimate. Definitely over the Nissan Ariya as well. And the Mustang Mach-E. Yeah. It needs to be on that list.
So that's like the quartet of good mainstream mass market electric vehicles, really?
I haven't driven an ID4.
Oh, yeah. We don't talk about the ID4 very much at all.
No. Have you driven it?
No.
Somehow it's escaped us.
Yeah, maybe I should book that.
My neighbor has one. He liked it, but that's all I know.
My major concern when talking about these vehicles is that they can feel so similar, and that they have the same notes, that they are fairly spacious, they have great torque, and they deliver around the range that you mentioned.
This one does feel quite different from the Hyundais because the torque is not huge. That is a different driving experience, and I think maybe a better driving experience for most people.
Why? Because it's less kind of like brutal?
Yeah, I don't think most people need rocket acceleration. I just don't see the point. It really feels like not a plus. I can tell you this. So we are looking in a year from now to replace the Crosstrek that we're leasing with an electric vehicle. And it's probably going to be an Ioniq 6 rear-wheel drive extended range. Because we don't need the power. We'd rather have the extra range. And the wheels are smaller, which helps you get even more range. And I can't foresee a situation where either I or my partner is going to be needing. I have performance cars in the garage. I don't need the electric daily driver, to do that, especially given the length of our commutes.
I keep thinking the same thing. I mean, I too need to replace one of our cars with something in the near future, and I keep thinking an electric vehicle might be the right fit.
Which car is this that you have to replace?
I think I want to replace the Scion, the FRS.
So you want to replace the fun car with a boring car?
Potentially, but I mean, I think that some of these electric vehicles are quite enjoyable to drive too.
Okay, but a very different experience.
Yeah.
Are you giving up on enthusiast driving, Sami? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I always go back and forth on it. I keep thinking I desperately want a slightly more practical vehicle to ferry my child around in. I keep thinking that perhaps a GTI or maybe an Elantra N would be the right fit for the job. And the other part of it is that I also do enjoy the driving experience that comes with an electric vehicle. Instant torque, always a full battery every morning, and really quiet, and never have to worry about that kind of stuff like gassing up.
I definitely think an electric vehicle is good for all of the reasons you mentioned. I just don't think it's really an enthusiast vehicle unless you are spending huge amounts of money. And even then, you're dealing with like thousands of pounds of extra weight. Yeah,
that's right. It's going from a very light car to something very, very heavy. So I don't know. I told you, I'm not really decided yet. But, I get to drive so many enthusiast cars during the year that it doesn't quite knock me over. To not have one in my own garage.
Wow.
Anyways, that's just how I'm feeling, man.
I'm a little sad. Let's talk about something
Nothing
else.
has happened yet.
Let's talk about something else.
Let me tell you what I've been driving lately is not an enthusiast car, but something that you told me you were very excited to hear about.
Yes.
And that's the 2025 Kia Carnival Hybrid, which is a minivan. Just so that our listeners are aware, the minivan market is supposed to be the family-friendly one that people have forgotten about. A lot of people prefer three-row crossovers or SUVs like the Suburbans and Expeditions and stuff like that for that kind of experience. But the minivans are still around. There's about 4 of them on the market, and each of them kind of evolve at what seems like a snail's pace. And the latest evolution is the Kia Carnival, which has now gained a hybrid powertrain. This goes directly against the Kia. The what's it called? The Toyota Sienna, which is only available now, I think, with a hybrid powertrain.
So is the Kia plug-in hybrid or regular hybrid?
It's a regular hybrid.
Okay, so it's kind of not exactly a competitor to the Chrysler Pacifica.
No. And the major elements where let me just hit you with the key facts here. This is a front-wheel drive hybrid vehicle. It is the most powerful regular hybrid, I think, that Kia makes. It has 242 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. It uses a 1.6-liter turbocharged four-cylinder and a 6-speed automatic. There is still a gas model that is available. It has a V6 with 288 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. So 40 more horsepower and 20 less and 10 less torque than this hybrid.
Okay.
However, the fuel economy is a huge upgrade here. While the gas model gets 21 miles per gallon combined, which is awful, the hybrid gets 33, which is a 12 mpg improvement.
Wow.
Over the gas model, and that's a big deal, especially because I think in practice, when I've driven the Kia Carnival, it was really bad on gas.
I mean, anytime you're over 30 miles per gallon in a vehicle with the aerodynamics of a boot, I think you're doing good.
Yeah, aerodynamics of a brick, really, and yeah, you're ahead of the game, exactly. I wanted to like this car more than I ended up really liking it. I think it's a great product. I just think that there are sometimes so many compromises that the automakers make, or that they insist on showing the media the most loaded version of a car, and those ones can come with certain compromises. So I think we've talked about this before. The middle seats in the Carnival feature this really slick first class kind of seating. They have great recline. They have a leg rest, and you can just like lounge in the second row of these seats. And you can also push them all the way back, almost into where the third row would be, and then you just have an insane amount of space. It feels like an amazing limo experience, better than any 7 Series in terms of or S Class in terms of overall space.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
And those rear seats feature heated and vented functionality. They also have big window shades because they're massive. The windows in the second row are huge, but having a nice shade like that will help shield you from the sun or anything else you don't want to see.
And shield your kids too, because like kids are often in car seats and they can't move out of the way of the sun.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'll tell you, I've had a couple of vehicles where my son has just been screaming because I've been driving like away from the sun. He's just getting blinded in his rear facing seat. And he's just like, wow, why is this happening?
I know we're laughing about it, but it does sound pretty bad.
He survived. It's okay. And our daily driver has these magnetic shades that I really like, that are fitted to the window of the car, which I really like. But anyways, back to the Carnival. The problem with these second row seats is that they really obscure I think one of the secondary functions somebody should get in a minivan, and that is for the overwhelming practicality of them. I have done so much moving in a minivan in the past. Like
me too. I moved to my place in the country from Montreal using a minivan.
And I found,
shout out to Chrysler Pacifica.
Yeah, and now the Pacifica has rear second row seats and third row seats that fold. And can even be removed or folded flat. I can't remember which.
Yeah, you can remove the second row.
These fancy seats in the Kia Carnival in both the hybrid and the gas model cannot be removed, and this is a problem that is also found in the Toyota Sienna, which is something you told me before we started our podcast.
And I believe the Sienna only has something like 100 cubic feet of cargo space, which is like 40 or 50 less than most minivans. So I'm assuming it's similar for this Kia.
Yeah. So. Because you can't fold down the middle seats.
You can't fold it at all?
No.
You can't fold it?
They're these power seats. They're like, I don't know how to tell you. They don't fold.
So in the Sienna, you can fold the seat back forward so that it makes a flat load floor. You can't do that in the...
No.
So it has even less space in the Sienna.
No, I have been really unimpressed with these seats.
That's
for this one reason.
Why would you not be able to do that?
Practicality-wise.
I can't understand that.
They're because I think they're powered seats, and
Yeah, but hitches go both ways. I mean, I'm all in on these Barcalounger type seats. I like that, but I don't see why you can't invest the extra money in what is undoubtedly an already expensive vehicle to make them fold forward as well.
Let me double check, because I've been trying real hard and they're not working so well.
Have you tried with a hammer?
No.
Sometimes a hammer will shake it free.
And I also found that because of the way that how big these seats are and how they move in the cabin, it's very difficult to get into the third row if you have that set up too. So these are two things that are really like because they don't like lean forward the way I think the other second row seats.
Do they slide?
Work. They do slide, yes. Okay. But they're so big that you can't really slide behind. You can't like get in behind them.
So you're saying don't get these seats. Is it an option?
That's what I'm trying to say, yeah. I think the entry-level models do not have this. They have a bench seat instead, which I imagine is removable. But I'll have to double check. This is a major concern for me because, as I mentioned, a minivan's secondary function, I think, is to haul stuff. And when you can't remove the second row seats, you really impact the ability to do so. Behind the third row of seats, there's about 40 cubic feet of storage space. And then when you fold down those rear seats, you've got 87 cubic feet of storage space. And then, like I said, you can just push that middle row all the way to the front and kind of like push them forward, lean them forward, but fold them.
Do you think Kia is expecting people to enter the van and then walk between the seats to get to the rear?
Yeah, but there's a way to slide the seats laterally, not just front and back, but forward and backward. So if you have them squished together in the center of the car, you wouldn't be able to.
But if they're squished together in the center of the car, wouldn't that give you more space to go in through the side?
It's not easy, I'm telling you. I don't know if I've put on too much weight or Sami, I'm just not as agile as I used to be.
You're like 6 foot something, right?
Yeah, but
maybe you're just not meant for the minivan life.
The third row? I know, that's so disappointing. I don't want that to be the truth. I'm trying my best.
I mean, normally it's like people who are tall have trouble with, sports cars and Ferraris and that kind of thing. But now it's crept into the minivan world too.
I'm just really unimpressed with all of this thing. I'm going to tell you all the weird things that have occurred to me in this car. My son is in a rear-facing car seat, and he's still quite young, and he doesn't really like his shoes or his socks. And he... when he's in his car seat, he just takes them out and chucks them. And because of how big this car is, I can't find them afterwards.
Oh, no.
So I have to slide them here and there, try to figure out
like a
where
Bermuda sock triangle in your...
Yeah, where these shoes are. And they've gone somewhere where it's really difficult for me to reach across the car seat in between the two seats.
Have you considered...
and try to grab them. So
I'm assuming they're not lace-ups, right?
No, they're Velcro.
Maybe you should move to lace-ups.
No, he loves laces.
They're like a little prison for his toes.
Yeah. He thinks they're spaghetti, I think.
Okay. I can see that.
So all these weird little things that make me kind of not love the vehicle. It's $4,000 more expensive than the gas one. It starts at
That's not so bad. Is that Canadian or US?
That's US.
That's so really not that bad at all.
Around $42,000 and goes up to $54,000.
So you're spending 10% more to get how much more?
50% better fuel efficiency.
50% better fuel. I mean, wow, yeah. That's a good deal.
I think 50%, yeah.
I mean, in a world where minivans are that expensive, which I'm not into, and we just had that whole conversation, that comes across as something positive.
Hey, $54,000 for a hybrid minivan that has all the features. I forgot to mention it has everything. It has two massive displays, a wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. It has wireless charging. It has an 11-inch head-up display, which is very nice. It has this in-car camera, which kind of negates the need for an array of mirrors to see what's going on in your back seat. So there's a bunch of really handy features here. I found that it's missing a couple of features that I remember it having, like the passenger talk feature. I can't find that anymore. I don't remember
if Kia had that.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure I've spooked people in my family.
No, they probably replaced it with the battery and all that stuff was where the battery is. Can't put a speaker in. We got the battery.
Yeah.
Well, here's something wild. I found this out. I might have said this on a previous episode, but we're talking about, we talked about the Sienna. You can't take the seats out there either. I found out that until like 2022, the Sienna had its spare tire mounted underneath the middle of the vehicle. And you had to open up like a space in the floor underneath the carpet where the insulation was, and that's where the ratchet was to like lower the tire down, and then you had to reach under the car and pull the tire out from the middle of the minivan.
This is not the only vehicle that you've had to lower a tire out of, but not in the middle of the vehicle.
Strange.
Usually it's somewhere way more accessible than the middle of the car.
So they moved
Imagine you're sitting there on the highway having to scooch under the middle of your car.
Oh, I mean, changing a tire on the highway is a nightmare under the best of circumstances, right?
Yeah.
So they moved the tire to this bulkhead in the left rear. You actually open up part of the left rear of the cargo area behind the paneling, and the tire is there now. So I don't know if that's better or worse, because I guess it's more accessible, but in theory, it's taking up space for the speaker.
But what if I had a child back there?
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that.
Hey,
Sammy,
get out.
if you filled the whole van, you can't change the tires.
That's right. Yeah, essentially.
Or you send the child out to do the job.
Yeah,
that's the ultimate solution.
Come here and learn something.
That's the practical one.
So it's a tough market. There's like I said, 4 entries. There's two hybrids with the Kia Carnival and the Toyota Sienna. There's a plug-in hybrid in the Pacifica, which is also available as a gas model, and there's the Honda Odyssey. Now, I used to really like the Honda Odyssey because you could get it with a vacuum.
Really doesn't take much for you, does it?
Yeah, that was my favorite part.
Speaker or a vacuum, you're in.
But reality, I think they also had a vacuum in the Chrysler at one point, and I would have preferred that car over everything. I think it's the most versatile. I think the Pacifica has a plug-in hybrid and has an all-wheel drive version of the vehicle, and I think those are the options that hit the best. Those make the biggest impact.
And I found that with the Pacifica Hybrid, the plug-in that I had, it was extremely aggressive at regen. And I ended up doing something like 40% of my driving on the battery, which isn't possible given the size of the battery. So it was really doing a good job charging on the way back and forth from Montreal on my trips. And that was like fully loaded with, and I mean to the ceiling, with stuff from my condo.
So, I mean, this is basically to say that the Kia Carnival has gotten better, especially with this hybrid trim. I just don't know if it's the right family-friendly vehicle for me or for the masses in comparison to some of the other options. It just presents itself as an alternative to the Toyota Sienna, and that's it. And I don't know if that's enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, sure. It's nice to have another hybrid minivan out there, especially given that, I mean, the
Sienna is more expensive.
And it's pretty buzzy. That drivetrain is pretty buzzy. You didn't have that experience with the Kia? No,
the Kia was pretty aggressive at turning off the engine, and only when you really put your foot into it did you get this like really ugly drony hum, and it went away pretty quickly. You also mentioned regenerative braking on the Chrysler Pacifica.
Yeah.
The Carnival has regenerative braking that you can control using the paddle shifters on the steering wheel, kind of like an EV.
Okay.
It was interesting. It helped get that battery up to a more usable charge, and there's a little gauge that shows you how much of that battery has like juice in it, and so that would help in kind of identifying how your driving habits can improve your fuel efficiency. And I like that. I do like a good driving coach. Anyways, that's just how I feel. It's in there. It's in this class. So it's when you have 4 options in this class, it's important to stand out. And I'm not sure if the Carnival is doing so by just offering an alternative Sienna. But with how much power it has and how much more fuel efficient it is over the gas car, it is a significant improvement over the last year's Carnival.
All right. If you are out there right now wondering, should I buy a hybrid minivan? Should I reach out to Sami to offer him some portable sunshades so his son stops baking in the many, many press cars he drives? Or is it time for an intervention so that Sami keeps his BRZ for the indefinite future, so that one day his son might inherit that BRZ and understand what driving was once like? There are multiple ways you can reach out to us and make all of those things happen. The easiest way is just to go to the website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. And there is a contact form there. You just fill it out, click submit, and it ends up in our inbox. You can also find us on social media. I'm at Hunting Benjamin on Instagram. Sammy is at Sammy_ha, like you're laughing. Also on Instagram. You can find me on Blue Sky too, same handle. Sammy, I don't think you're on Blue Sky yet, are you?
I think I am, but I don't know what it is.
Search for Sammy on Blue Sky. Beware of clone accounts that aren't real. And finally, you can just email us the old-fashioned way, benjamin@benjaminhunting.com.
What are you driving next week, Ben?
I am driving the 2024 Mini Cooper Countryman S.
Is that not an electric vehicle?
It is not an electric vehicle. It is a straight-up performance ? Mini SUV.
Okay, great. I'm driving the Kia Sorento X-Line.
X-Line, nice. So you're going to pretend to do off-roading and then pretend to talk about it.
Exactly. Thank you. I'll talk to you then.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.